Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. We're so excited to have you here for this exciting panel Q&A and networking session with sixsense Strategy Group. My name is Amanda Berry, and I'm the lead at the Office of Research Trainees at the University Health Network. I'm joined here by my colleague, Lauren Delbell, who is the ORT's coordinator and will be supporting the event. I want to start by saying a huge thank you to everybody from sixsense Strategy Group for participating and for being such a pleasure to collaborate with on this session. It's been so fun to plan, and we're so excited that so many of you are interested in it. A special thank you to Callie Iyer and Holly Fansky. I hope all of you, thank you all for joining us today. I hope you all take full advantage of this amazing session, especially since, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, they do have open positions right now on their website. So definitely check that out if you're interested. I know I wasn't supposed to say that, but I'm going to say it anyways. Okay, so continue to fill out the poll if you're just joining us. We'd love to hear about what you're interested in. But in the meantime, before we start this session, I want to acknowledge the land that UHN is on. We know that many of you are connecting from different places, and we encourage you to research the land that you're on. The ORT is happy to provide resources for this to help you and to help you with your education on this. If this is something you're interested in, feel free to reach out to either me or Lauren. There has been a UHN hospital on this land since 1829. Long before that, Indigenous people were its stewards. They, as their descendants, and we at UHN do now, learned, shared knowledge, and healed together. Regardless of where we sit today, we owe much to the peoples that have called this land home. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. This land is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to live and work here. We remember and honor the legacy of the people who have been here before us and all those who work to make the promise and the challenge of truth and reconciliation real. And if you'd like to learn more about what UHN is doing to move forward with truth and reconciliation, please feel free to reach out. We're happy to link you to resources. So I'd like to invite you to join me in taking a moment to reflect on the land that you are on and what it means to you. Thank you. Okay, so now we'll close the poll. Very interesting to see that there's a great mix of interest from the audience, and I think this will be a wonderful event for you to learn about all of those different career areas. Amazing. So we're going to get started, and again, we're so excited for this event. We have a packed schedule that we're excited to share with you. So we're starting off now with the welcome and the introductions, and then from 4:05 to 4:20, we will go through an overview of the sixsense Strategy Group. And I've seen the presentation, it's so exciting. There's so much useful information there. So we're so excited to have our panelists give that and share that information with you so you can learn more about these different career areas. After that, I will be moderating a panel discussion with our wonderful panelists from 4:20 to 5:05 p.m. At 5:05, we'll ask everybody who was not selected for the networking sessions to log off, and thank you for joining. And then we'll go into the 2 networking sessions that are 25 minutes each, and we'll give more instructions later on how that will work. And then from 5:55 to 6 o'clock, we'll come back together for a quick workshop closing and final details there. A couple of small points I want to mention. The session is being recorded, and the video and the presentation slides will be shared after the workshop. So you don't have to take feverish notes because we'll provide you all of that information. We also ask to make sure that you're respectful at all times, according to the ORT's Code of Conduct that we hope that you reviewed ahead of time. If you haven't, you can view it on our Eventbrite page. We ask that you keep your camera and your mic off until the networking session so that we can ensure that this conversation goes well. And if you have any questions for the panelists at any point in time, please feel free to share them. We're excited to ask your questions, and please add them to the Slido. And Lauren will share the link in the link for the Slido in the chat. Amazing. Okay, so to kick it off, I want to introduce our exciting panel. We will quickly introduce them now, but you'll hear a lot more about them later. So first off, we have Patrick Hillan, who is the Director of Science and Strategy. We also have Kwamaa Duah, who is the Senior Medical Communications Manager, Chris Zealey, who's the Director of Science and Strategy. And unfortunately, Krushik O'Hill is unable to attend today, but we're grateful to have Katrina Hicks, the sixsense Operations Manager, join us in her place. So thank you to all of our panelists. And with that, I'll kick off to our first panelist, Patrick, to start the presentation.
Hopefully everyone can
Sorry,
hear.
you're on.
Oh, there we go. The joys of technology. But thank you so much to HN for really providing us with this opportunity to come and speak to everybody today. We're excited to share our perspectives, our experience in working in the field of consulting and medical communications. And we look forward to answering any questions that the team has today on this call. So maybe without further ado, why don't we kick things off with just providing an overview on who we are, who is Sixsense Strategy Group. So we're a boutique consultancy firm based in Toronto, approximately 40 folks on the team. And really our focus is on insights, strategy, and strategic communications within the life sciences industry. So we partner with early stage biotech and pharma companies that are essentially in the phase of launching new therapies, or indeed entering into new disease areas, and are looking for strategic partners to ensure their successful market entry of the therapy. If we go to the next slide, so we work across multiple disease areas. So as you can see here, this is just a snapshot of some of the disease areas in which we work, and it ranges, as you can see, from neurology through to immunology, and actually a growing part of our business is in the rare disease space, which is super exciting. One thing which we really emphasize to our clients, and it's an expectation internally as well, is that we have the ability to work across different disease states. And before we jump into a project, it's on us as an organization to get up to speed on the science behind the therapeutic area of disease. We do that through various methods, including literature reviews, internal dossiers. We can go into that a little bit later on, but it's really cool working in this environment, having the opportunity to work in different disease areas. It keeps your scientific tentacles buzzing, and that's how I would describe it anyway. Coming from a neuroscience background, getting the opportunity to work in oncology and immunology, it's pretty cool. Go to the next slide. So it's a little bit of just a snapshot again of our clients. You'll probably recognize some of these names. You've got some of the big players like the GSKs of the world, and then some smaller organizations, Sage Therapeutics, who are in the process of launching some of their initial therapies. Most of the clients that we work with are based in the States, so our client contacts, our projects are US based, but we do work globally as well. So right now we have some ongoing projects in the EU as well as Canada. And it's really interesting because it gives you a different perspective in how some of these diseases are treated. So you have the same disease, which may be treated quite differently in the EU versus Canada versus the United States. So getting that insight through engaging with patients and physicians is super interesting as well. So go to the next slide. Again, this is a bit of a schematic here. I wanted to present this just to give you an overview of really how our offerings fit into the drug development process and the drug development timeline. And again, this is just an example, and many of these activities are on a continuum, they're not static. For example, scientific communications, as you can imagine, you would want to be communicating your science as a pharma company the moment you have data, and that will transcend both the pre-launch phase into the post-launch phase when you have phase 3B, phase 4 data. But really our work with our clients, and mostly medical affairs teams, really starts with understanding the science. So they need to understand the science, as do we. And in parallel to that, there's an understanding of the market which we need to garner as well. So gathering the perceptions and the needs and motivations of HCPs, healthcare providers, patients, payers. Having built that understanding of the science and the market really helps to inform our strategic planning. So working with medical affairs teams to build their strategic plans to inform their activities for launch is where we would kind of transition next to. In addition, we help support medical affairs teams both internally as well as the field teams in training, so developing training materials, which Kwamaa will be able to speak to momentarily, and as well as supporting their scientific communication efforts. So building resources to help effectively communicate their science, again, internally, as well as externally through within congresses, through MSL doctor interactions. And then in the post-launch phase, we help support life cycle management activities as well. So again, this gives you a little snapshot on on the work that we do, and we'll of course go into this in a little bit more detail as we move through the presentations with Chris and Kwamaa and through the discussion later on this afternoon. But I will hand it over to Chris now just to tee up some of our work that we do within the strategy world.
Great, thanks, Patrick. All right, so I don't want to spend too long. I know we only have so much time, so I won't get too much into the weeds here, but I did want to spend a bit of time talking about science and strategy, specifically at sixsense. So what is strategy at sixsense, and what is this term science and strategy that we use? Well, ultimately, it's taking market landscape insights, some more of those traditional business insights, and combining them with scientific and medical and clinical insights to develop thoughtful strategy. So for example, building off of what Patrick was saying, is we may be working with a client who's looking to launch a new therapy. So we would partner with them and we would help them understand the current market landscape. So again, that more business side of things, but we would also scientifically assess the clinical and the scientific value of their therapy in order to bring that together and develop a custom strategic framework for their launch. So this would include developing things like medical affairs goals, so attainable goals, as well as strategies and objectives for those strategies, and then helping them think through some of those activities and tactics to really bring that plan to life. So you're going to put that framework together for them. But now I understand that that is a little bit abstract, so I'll just spend a minute here trying to make it a little bit more tangible, and by talking really about our approach here, really our guiding principles on strategy. So when we enter any strategic project, any strategic planning project with the client, there are four major steps that we follow. And the first one here, Patrick started talking about it, is we start with the needs and the motivations of our clients' customers. Their needs and motivations in a disease state, their needs of a new therapy, or their needs, any sorts of needs that are relevant to that indication. And when I say customers, we could be talking about prescribing physicians, but we could also be talking about those who actually use the therapy. So maybe a patient, someone who administers it. So that could be a caregiver, maybe a nurse or a nurse practitioner, or it could be a payer or a regulator, right? So we need to be quite holistic here in who we look at. And we'll do this through activities like ad boards, one-to-ones. We'll do some market research, and we'll do some quite comprehensive situation analysis work to get a really good understanding of those needs and motivations. The second thing that we'll do is we will take an objective look at our client's offer. And this is really important because a lot of companies tend to focus on what's so great about their therapy, but it's really important to also focus on what isn't so great. So the offer does include the good, the bad, and the ugly, and it's important that we do a deep dive into all of that. And this also goes beyond just the efficacy and the safety of a therapy. This includes things like route of administration, mechanism of action, access and patient services, and so on and so forth. So the therapy and then everything that surrounds the therapy as well is what we define as the offer. And combining one and two together, that really helps us and really helps our clients define some tangible goals. That is really the starting point for developing strategy. So the third piece from there is then we'll start to actually design a custom strategy. And the aim of designing strategy here at sixsense is to tighten that match. So bring together one and two that I just described. So how can we take an offer from our client and really match it up with the needs and motivations of their key customers, of their key stakeholders, ultimately so that we can give these customers, give these stakeholders an offer that they can't really refuse because it's perfectly matched up with what we know they need and what they're motivated around. And then the fourth step here, this is where we get a little bit more tactical. And we describe it as letting strategy drive execution. And this is also incredibly important because we do see that a lot of companies, they let activities drive their planning. So they'll look at what activities, what tactics they're going to execute over the next year, and then they'll build a plan around it. Well, we partner with our clients, and we try and flip that mentality. Ultimately, strategy is what's going to get you where you need to get to. So we'll help them develop key executable activities and tactics. And we do all of this through a number of facilitated workshops and sessions, and through synthesis and offline work with our clients. And again, I understand that is quite abstract, but I'm happy to answer any questions during the panel discussion. But I'll pass it to Kwamaa to talk about MedComs for now.
Thanks, Chris. So medical communications at sixsense is a little bit different than what you may anticipate MedComs to be at some other classic agencies. Like Chris mentioned, really strategy drives our execution, and that's no exception when it comes to MedComs. So at sixsense, at a fundamental level, we're distilling and translating scientific information and data into scientifically robust, clear, and compelling narrative. And this typically is, I mean, for the most part, supported by data, but it's in alignment with our clients' needs and their key messaging. And we make sure to tailor it for particular audiences. So that includes all the customers that were previously mentioned, like healthcare providers, payers, and patients. And the reason why we partner with our clients to create these deliverables is to really help support their launch activities. So whether it's preparing a market for launch by doing disease education, whether that's helping to facilitate conversations with MSLs and physicians or sales reps and physicians through interactive training modules, or really, supporting the adoption of a therapy by helping to create key scientific narratives. So there's a lot of ways in which we help our clients prepare for launch. So what's an example of a medical communications project? One here is what we call an interactive training module. And really the purpose of this is to prepare field teams for conversations that they're going to be having with the field. So that is to make sure that they're equipped to have really comprehensive conversations on the science behind the disease state, the therapy, and their overall scientific story for their therapy. And what this deliverable look like can range from a simple PowerPoint, a static PowerPoint deck, and typically our Med Affairs partners typically like this kind of straightforward type of training module, all the way to something that is more interactive, and it allows for gamification and hotspots and pop-ups, ways in which you can really engage the learner to help with retention and engagement. And we find those resonate really well with commercial teams or sales reps. So actually, if you go to the next slide, I'll dive in deeper into how we really, our philosophy to medical communication. So overall, we believe that effective MedComs should be, like I mentioned, scientifically robust, tell a clear and comprehensive story, and deliver a great user experience. So, and this is executed in a variety of different creative ways to really engage an audience. But we find this has been especially important as we're in the era of COVID. We've had to pivot to hybrid conferences and more virtual engagements, really ensuring that our deliverables resonate also through a virtual platform, as has been a key thing over the past few years. So across our offerings, we of course have specific processes to really produce high quality and effective materials that are tailored to our clients' needs and ensure their success. But regardless, we're guided by these four main principles. So number one here you'll see is that understanding that science. So that involves robust literature reviews and research, because fundamental to all that we do is the science. We don't want to just tell a story to fit our clients' needs if it's not backed by something. And then with the second principle of keeping that audience at the forefront, we make sure that whatever we write, will resonate appropriately with the target audience. And so depending on the audience, we may have to adapt our writing, the presentation of the information to make sure it's actually effective. So for example, the training module for an MSL is going to be a lot more robust, higher science versus for a commercial team, they may not have that level of scientific acumen. So we'll adapt the way we write, reduce the amount of jargon, make sure it's a little bit more engaging, so it resonates with them a little bit better. And so if we go to number 3, which is organizing the information in a way that tells a logical narrative. So there's a lot of ways to tell a story, but ultimately we're in the business again of telling clear, compelling, and strategic stories. So we have to make sure that it's aligned with our client's goals and key messaging. So typically we'll work with a client on a variety of different deliverables, and it has to seem like they're coming from the same voice. There's consistency in the stories that we're telling. And then lastly is including the so what. So this is really where you see the marriage between strategy and medcoms, because at the end of the day, we need to ensure the why of what we're doing is clear. So this is really explaining the why of the information. Why is it important to the client? And why is it important to the audience that it's intended for? So I'm interested to hear any questions that you have. Definitely can dive into more specifics on the actual deliverables that we create, but this essentially is our philosophy and our guiding principles to medcoms at sixsense.
Great. Hi, everyone. I am going to walk through what an introduction to project management here at sixsense is. And so for us, I mean, these principles can really be applied across a variety of industries, but this is what it means here at sixsense. So what we do in the project management team is identify and manage the project scope, the schedule, the costs, the resources we need to do the job, and the risk to ensure the project is successfully completed in line with the client expectations. So we're going to sort of oversee the entire project to make sure that we get what our clients need in a great manner. And an example of project management here of sixsense is developing a comprehensive document that captures and defines all the work and management aspects of a project. Here we call it a statement of work. This includes expectation, scope, deliverables, finance, and the timeline of a project. So really we sit down with our clients, understand what they're trying to do, and really lay out what we are going to do for them in what timeline and what resources we're going to do to get there. And our project management team would oversee that. There's a few guiding principles on project management. Initiate, this is a really critical piece to all projects, understanding and defining what the project requirements are and the stakeholders' expectations. So we understand what the client needs and they understand how we're going to get them there. The next step is plan. So this is where we outline and refine the project plan to achieve the desired goals. So we organize and establish scope, identify communication channels for stakeholder management, and finalize objectives. These two guiding principles are critical to the success of a project because they tie directly into the next guiding principle, was just execute, monitor, and control. So if the initiate and plan aren't done effectively at the execute, monitor, and control, this is where things can a little bit go off the rails if the first two principles aren't executed appropriately. And this is where we put the plan into action and keep the team on track. And we do that by tracking, reviewing, and regulating progress and actively monitoring scope, schedule, and budget. So we're always keeping eyes on, are we doing the appropriate amount of work for what the expectations are to get us to where we need to be. And then the final principle is close. This is a really important area as well, so that our client and all the stakeholders are really on board. Like, this is the close of the project. We've met your expectations. This is what we completed, what we want to do. It's all a great success, and we formally close the project and document the learnings. Documenting the learnings is really important. Always interested to making sure we learn and grow throughout this process. And the next job that we take on, benefits from some of the learnings that we had from the previous project. I'm going to actually take this one as well, how we got here. If I can just go to the next slide. This is really the early career experiences of the sixsense team. So for us, I mean, we have such a huge variety of people here at sixsense, and it's really great. It allows us to have that broad exposure to different types of projects in different disease states. Education, we have a split between Masters of Science and PhDs. Additional education includes postdoctoral education, Masters of Biotech, mini MBA programs, good clinical practice certification, scientific communication certificate, project management certificate, all great add-ons to the type of education that people are coming into sixsense with. Work or internship before people come through our door. Some of our medical communications teams came directly from our contractor pool. A great spot for people to be exposed to the type of work that we do. If you're kind of flirting with the idea of medical communications, it's a really great way to see that in action. Science and strategies, some people have previous consulting or industry work, project management, previous project management positions. Additional work experience could be research positions or scientific writing. Extracurriculars. This is a great one, especially for people who are looking to get into the strategy side of things, to sort of get a little bit of business exposure, a bit of that strategy thinking. Graduate consulting groups like the UCG, graduate student associations, volunteers in scientific writing and communication, or nonprofit volunteer, and science and strategy specific experience, case competitions, and science to business network. And then networking is another really important thing that a lot of people have done before they've come into our door, whether it be informational interviews, so connecting with our people on LinkedIn to get some more information of what the job is, how they enjoy their work in sort of this industry, how they got here. Networking events like the GMCA, LCSDS, LinkedIn groups, workshops, seminars, and conferences.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. I think when I first saw these slides, I was so excited to see that you're sharing all this data of the wonderful ways and diverse ways that people have found themselves in your company. And I think that'll be a great resource to our postdocs and trainees and staff that are present here today. So thank you so much for sharing that. So now we're going to kick it off to the panel. And so I'm going to start with a couple of questions for the panelists first. Continue to add your questions to the Slido, and we will be able to pose those to the panelists as well. Perfect. Okay, so thank you all for those wonderful presentations, but I think we'd all love to know a little bit more about your personal career path. So maybe starting with Patrick, do you mind telling us a little bit more about your career path?
Sure, of course. So you can probably hear from my accent that I am not from Toronto. So I'm originally from Ireland, and I studied my science degree, undergrad and master's in neuroscience at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. And there I met my now wife in the lab, who's also a neuroscientist. But I didn't know what I wanted to do. She was Canadian, so we came over to Canada. It's like, geez, where can I apply this all this training that I learned in the lab and through theory? It's like, well, I don't want to be in the lab for the rest of my career, but again, I was still at a loss. And I played rugby, and I spoke to one of my teammates who was a headhunter, and talking about career development. Where do we want to go that's where I wanted to go in my career. I said, well, I don't really know. He says, well, why don't you come and work for me? Come and do some headhunting within the life sciences. This will allow you to kind of understand what types of roles may be applicable to your skill set, and it will build a skill that you probably don't have, i.e. sales, engaging with stakeholders. So I said, well, you know what, why not? I was at a bit of a loss at that point in time, and worked several years in that sales business development role, got to understand the types of positions which were in industry, from medical affairs right through to market access and commercial roles. Then I also learned about the consulting world, and through some business development calls, I actually came across sixsense Strategy Group, met up with the president and sort of having a conversation. And the more and more I asked about the organization and what the work that we were doing at that point in time, the more and more became of interest to me. So what was supposed to be a business development call to try and bring talent into the organization actually was a little bit self-serving, because I find that this was something where I could really apply my skill set, marrying both the business and the science. So we stayed in touch, and then I saw that they were hiring, so I reached out again. Said, "Do you remember me?" And the Irish guy who played rugby and didn't know what he was just trying to hit you up for some business. And I threw my name in the hat, went through the interview process, case studies, the face-to-face interviews, and ended up landing my job here. And that was 7.5 years ago, which is crazy. And we were a small company back then, of around 5 or 6 people. We've grown. We've seen some amazing change over that 7.5 years. So my path here was probably a little bit less traditional. But it was really great having the opportunity to figure out what I wanted to do and do that research, while also earning money and landing at the place where I could apply my skills and do something which I really enjoy.
Amazing. Chris, do you want to go next?
I can't really follow that though. That was very well, very well rehearsed. Slightly different story though for me, even though Patrick and I sit in the same kind of role here now. So by training, I'm a microbiologist. So I did my study at Waterloo and then my graduate studies at McGill. Like a lot of scientists, maybe not like a lot on this call here, but definitely a lot that we have at our company. I realized quite early on that lab bench work was just not for me. It didn't match up with my personality, and I realized it didn't match up with my career goals. So I started researching fairly early on into grad school what I could do with a science degree or microbiology degree, because I didn't want to lose that. I didn't want to completely sell out. So I just happened to find through my searches Sixth Sense strategy group. Again, this was about 6 years ago now, so we were doing a little bit of different work, but definitely still doing that strat work. And I interviewed, and at the time we were actually hiring interns. We don't do an internship program anymore, but I did start as an intern, and it allowed me to get my feet wet a little bit, see if there's a match between what I wanted, what the company was looking for, and clearly there was, because I'm still here today. But I started as an analyst and then worked my way up to where I sit now, so similar to Patrick. But I did start here right out of school, so a little bit of a different entry point for me.
Wonderful, thank you. And continuing the microbiology trend, so I'll pass it over to Kwamaa.
Yes. So also like Chris, I'm a microbiologist by training. So I got my start at the University of Ottawa, and I did my undergrad in biomedical science, specializing in molecular medicine. So I did a little bit of research in my undergrad, and I was really into the science. It was something that I really loved, and genetics really had my heart. So that took me to Toronto, and that's where I continued my research career at U of T. And funny enough, I was in the same lab as Amanda here. So also a microbiology lab at U of T. And I joined with my master's, still was debating whether or not I wanted to go and do my PhD, but similar to what you heard before, I soon realized, okay, I love the science. There's certain things that really resonate with me, talking about science, writing science, but I didn't really see myself in the back of a dark microscope room for the rest of my life. So I decided to venture out and see what else I could do with a life sciences degree. So that's when I really started hitting the pavement in networking. So just joining different events and societies and just reaching out to people on LinkedIn and finding out what the hell their job entailed. I didn't really know what consulting was until my last year of my master's. And when speaking with folks in the field, I thought it really kind of leveraged my love of science, but also my other interests. And, I like engaging with people. I like the fact that we get to do work that really moves business and has tangible effects on the bedside. So with that, I actually got in contact with a couple folks at Sixth Sense, again, just LinkedIn messaging. And after a few calls, they encouraged me to join as a contractor. So I applied, went through that process, and yeah, I started contracting. And even at the same time, I was interested in other potential opportunities and in business development, and even looking at the total different end in policy and government. But after contracting at Sixsense, I was given the opportunity to join full time. And at the time, we actually didn't have a fully realized medical communications stream. And so I joined as a science and strategy analyst. And as time went on, our offerings and our clients' needs really evolved. And I was given the opportunity to help really build that side of the business. And so our first kind of real MedComms projects was interactive training modules. I kind of dove in head first and I loved it. Still to this day, one of my favorite types of projects to support and lead. And so I made the decision to make the shift from strictly science and strategy into MedComms. And now here we are over 3.5 years later, every day still expanding our offerings and things that we provide for our clients in terms of MedComms.
Thank you for sharing that. I love the idea of being adapted to the client's needs and changing and evolving over time, which is wonderful. Last but not least, of course, Katrina.
Yeah, of course. I love going after this impressive group and talking about my career path. Definitely a bit of a different path than these guys who are, such wonderful degrees. I actually went to theater school a million years ago, and very similar to Chris and Kwamaa, didn't want to be stuck behind a dark curtain, realized I didn't want to be in theater for the rest of my life, and took those skills and went into client services on Bay Street for a corporate securities law firm. Really learned a lot and grew a lot there of sort of the needs to support, kind of the main players. Here's our strategy analysts in medical communications, then it was lawyers. And then I wanted to expand my skills. So I actually went back to school. I went to George Brown College and got my HR management certificate, and then looked for my new opportunity. And that brought me to Sixsense probably 4.5 years ago. And I've had an opportunity to help Sixsense grow and develop into 40 people today. So really proud of the work that we've done together and have a chance to utilize those skills that I went back to school for to learn, and very, very non-traditional compared to people who might be coming out of a lab or a research position, but still got me here as part of this amazing group.
That's one of the things that I really love that came out of the survey data as well, is that you can join these careers and this company from so many different entry points. So for all the people in the audience that are a master's student or a PhD or a postdoc or in something completely different, there could be an entry point for you. And I love that, because we often get a lot of questions from our trainees. Should I do a master's? Should I do a PhD? What is the difference in the offerings? And it's great to see that there are positions for everyone from different backgrounds. So that's fantastic. We're getting tons of audience questions coming in. So I will turn to those in a second. But one of the things I love asking panelists is, what advice would you give to trainees looking to break into your field?
I can maybe take a shot at this and then I'll get the team to layer on top. I would say do research, speak to people, understand what the role entails, understand the good, the bad, the ugly about the role, right? Coming into consulting, you may love the content, but maybe the longer hours are not for you. So getting a really comprehensive picture of what the role involves by reaching out, leverage LinkedIn as much as possible. 90% of people on LinkedIn are willing to give you 15, 20 minutes, half an hour of their time to walk you through their experience. People love talking about themselves. So 9 times out of 10, if you reach out to someone on LinkedIn to do some informational interviews, you're going to get a response. So I would say my number one recommendation would be network to understand what the role really entails before you make that decision to proceed. I don't know, Chris, Kwamaa.
Yeah. I mean, I can add from my perspective, the concept of extracurriculars. I think they're so underappreciated, and you can actually really prepare yourself for a role by getting even tangential experience through extracurriculars. So if you're interested in consulting, look into your, your graduate student consulting groups. If you're interested in writing, there should be newsletters, blogs, other opportunities where you can write, even talk to your PIs. Maybe they need help writing grants, or help someone out with writing their abstract. There's a lot of ways you can get writing practice that's outside of just your day-to-day writing your thesis. So I definitely encourage you to try to get involved, join clubs, and you might be surprised what you actually really like doing just by doing things outside of the bench.
I don't really have too much to add to that, other than just to build off of what Patrick was saying is, what's the worst thing that's going to happen if you reach out to someone on LinkedIn? Either they don't reply or they say no, and then you move on to the next person. And I'd be shocked if that many people said no. Most people say yes. So don't feel afraid to reach out to the senior VP of whatever the consulting firm or the medcoms agency is, or whatever company. Just do it. Reach out, have the 15-minute call.
Yeah, I think everything has been said. I mean, it is really important for me as sort of, the first face that people are meeting coming into Sixth Sense is really, how have you expressed interest in this other area, in this other career, in this other path? What things have you done yourself to sort of learn about this position, or what we do here, or the type of work that we do? It really goes a long way during a first interview when somebody has said, I've talked to Chris, I participated in a business case competition, I know that this is what I want to do. That, to me, that is, somebody has really showed an interest and investment in their own career.
Amazing. Thank you so much. You are all making my life so easy because you're already answering everybody's questions in the Slido without even being asked them. So that's fantastic. A lot of people have asked about how to stand out as a candidate, and I think that's some really great advice that you gave, Katrina. Does anybody else have any additional thoughts on how to stand out as a candidate?
I think it's important to know your story. So it is somewhat similar to what Katrina was saying, but the first question you're going to get in an interview is why? Right. Why, not only why this company, but why this type of job? I know I ask it to every single person I talk to on LinkedIn is why consulting, why strategy? And it's a very difficult question to answer, especially in a way that isn't bland and taken from Google. So you do want to really understand what that story is specifically for yourself, and then build in those elements of your experience, build in those elements of your interests. You feel free to kind of get a bit creative in that story, but make sure that you have one when you get into those situations.
Yeah, and a lot of the foundation for that story is going to be, having a comprehensive understanding of the role. So doing that research to build your foundation, to build your story for the why I want to move into this industry. And that can often be the yes, let's have a follow-up discussion and see if there are opportunities within the organization versus, no. And I've been on many calls where I've seen, both sides of the spectrum on this.
Wonderful. I think tying to that is the question of what skills do you think are necessary to excel in your job, and what skills would it be useful for trainees considering these fields to try to grow during their graduate experience or their extracurricular experiences?
I think a major skill to have that will set you up for success is organizational skills. Really being able to manage your time and your projects effectively. I know that the pace in academia particularly is kind of slow. You kind of are the ones pushing your projects along versus, here at Sixth Sense and really at any agency, we're in client services. So we have certain timelines and deadlines and goals that we need to reach. So really having a full grasp of your time and manage your projects successfully will definitely ensure you do well.
Yeah, I think in addition to that, a lot of our work is to help clients solve problems. So clients come to us with a problem, and often they're not very good at articulating what the problem is, or they may come across as, oh, there's a problem here, but they can't really be clear in relaying that across. So having an inquisitive or curious nature is important as well, because a lot of what we do is we ask a lot of questions. We want to peel back the layers of the onion to really understand what is the core issue at the heart of causing our clients some pain. If it's, whatever it might be, but coming in from a point of curiosity is something which we do pretty much for all of our projects. So having that inquisitive, curious nature is something I would say would be important as well. And it's not a tangible, it's something you have to
it's intangible. It's very much a personality type.
It is a personality type.
The ability to listen fundamentally,
Right.
and listening to understand versus listening to give a response, I think is very important.
I can add one more to this, and it's obvious for medical communications, and Kwamaa said it many times, it's being able to tell a good story. And I don't mean like being able to make up a good fictional story. No, I mean being able to communicate something very clearly in a story that makes sense. And most people don't know this, but most of strategy is actually storytelling. Can you tell the rationale behind a problem and the solution to it and how you're going to get there in a way that's crystal clear? That I find is a very, very difficult skill. And if you can start to hone that before you come into this type of job, it just makes your life a lot easier.
I think it's so important to remember for, grad students who are feeling like they don't have a lot of free time to build up these skills. There's a lot of that storytelling that's needed for presenting your research. And
Yep.
so everything you're doing for your committee meetings and your seminars that you give to the department or at conferences, that's all practicing those storytelling skills, those telling the why and all of those things that are required. So there's clear ways that you can build these skills while also finishing your degree and not taking time away from that. And same with communication and writing papers and things like that. You always need storytelling. So I think there's lots of ways to build those critical skills. Katrina, did you have anything to add? Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I think that, the team kind of hit on most of them. One of the things I see a lot is we're very collaborative and we are, working in a hybrid environment. A really great skill is, reaching out to your colleagues and leaning on them for support. A lot of times people, especially coming straight from academia or straight from a scientific on the bench, it's sort of head down, I'm going to solve this problem. They'll take 3 days to do it if I'm going to solve this, but it could easily be solved by reaching out to some of your colleagues and leaning on them for their expertise. Really important to everything that we do is to talk it through with each other because in the end, we are, all boats rise with all of our successes. So we need to make sure that we are utilizing everybody's skills because everyone brings a different perspective.
Amazing. We've had a question about how much business do you like people to understand, or how much business is important for your jobs, especially for people coming from a science background? And how do you suggest that people could fill those gaps if understanding business is important?
I guess this depends on which side, like if you're thinking medical communications or strategic consulting. I can talk from the strategy perspective. I'm sure Patrick can provide some perspective as well. It depends on the level at which you're coming in. So a lot of the folks that we hire at the entry level, at the analyst level, we also do hire at other levels. But we don't have an expectation that you're some business whiz and you have like a BA or a BBA and a master's degree in science and a PhD. There absolutely is not that level of scrutiny on business knowledge. How we typically describe it is more of a budding interest and a business acumen. So I know that's a very intangible way of answering the question, but it's not like, hey, we're expecting people to have the knowledge of like a tenured MBA professor. Like that's absolutely not what we're looking for. I think really the best way of getting that experience is through things like Kwamaa was saying and Katrina was saying is like join case competitions. Do some practice case competitions online if you're not a student. Definitely get involved in any of those organizations. It's just a different mindset, it's a different way of thinking. And it is a really, really important skill coming into, again, the strategic consulting side.
Yeah, I think layering on that, having a baseline knowledge of the drug development process, it's more kind of direct and tangible. So coming in, knowing what it takes to develop a drug. So there's various phases, relative to those phases, what do they look like? within, phase 3, what kind of activities would a pharmaceutical company be doing to help prepare for launch? So having a little bit of business knowledge on the industry, I think, is really useful coming in. Otherwise, you're getting set into a role whereby, Kwamaa may say, develop a core slide deck or some training modules. But in the context of the overall drug development program, if you don't know how that fits in, it can often be quite difficult to kind of grasp what we're trying to do here for our clients. So I say through networking, through research, understand the industry, I think is important.
Yeah, I think that's essentially how you fill those knowledge gaps, is by doing your research, talking to folks, getting an understanding of what happens in pharma. Why would they even need a vendor to help with strategy and creating deliverables? It'll really help you to understand the role better, and then how to prepare for the process of getting into that role.
Wonderful, thank you. On the other side, I have a question for Katrina. Do you find that folks in project management have science backgrounds as well, or do they come usually from more project management based or other kinds of degrees or backgrounds?
Yeah, we have a mix. I will say, a science degree is useful, maybe not necessarily a master's or a PhD, but an understanding of when we go to, a lot of times we have advisors, we have to evaluate their CVs to understand where they might fit into the scope of an advisor. Understanding some of the basic principles really helps if you know the difference. I'm not going to pronounce any of the words. I don't know, our team knows that better than me, but being able to distinguish the type of advisors that we have, what their specialty is and where they would fit in does help. That being said, it's not a requirement, but it would just take a little bit more learning when you're onboarding to sort of learn what those differences are. And then for our team, we have a lot of experience in live events. That comes in very useful, just understanding the principles of what the expectations are of people who are participating in these sort of meetings, because we want every advisor and our client to feel like we have provided a white glove service. So that level of customer service is really important. And it's part of our reputation. People walk out of a room from a session that we facilitated and designed from the side of the strategy and medcoms and executed from the events and meetings team, and they have had a great experience and are looking forward to working with us again.
You just put a little bit of the pressure on me. It was whether we're hosting to your standard. But that's great, because that's a different skill that a lot of people, again, might have from their degrees and helping to host conferences or host seminars and things like that, even events for their graduate student associations and things like that. So it's great to know that those kind of opportunities that they might already be doing could set them apart.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Another question that I have for the strategy team would be, can you kind of tell us the difference of between sixsense and kind of boutique consulting versus some of the larger consulting firms that people might have heard of?
I want to take that one. That's a good one.
Yeah, that is a very good. I need to phrase this well. I mean, I can't necessarily talk to boutique consulting in general. I can talk to sixsense, and from what I have seen in some larger consulting firms. Again, what I spoke to during my very, very brief presentation overview of what we do, the fundamental of our offering in strategy is customized strategy. So it's all based in thoughtfulness. It's all based in a lot of thinking and working closely, partnering with our clients to develop something that's custom to them and their situation. Now, I'm not saying that isn't done in larger consulting firms, but oftentimes what I see and what Patrick's probably seen is we are a little bit more nimble. So we need to, because we're a smaller team, we do need to kind of jump between things quite a lot with our more nimble clients. And we can develop something that's a little bit more custom. Now, when I look at kind of a bigger consulting firm and they put together an incredibly comprehensive strategic framework for a giant organization, they have systems and processes in place to develop those strategic plans. So there's like little, I guess you always have a little job to do, right? You need to fill in certain boxes, certain frameworks, do certain research. It is a little bit more systems and process driven. With us, we're very thinking driven when it comes to our strategy. So it's just a slightly different way of approaching things. Not to say there's no value in frameworks and big consulting. There's a time and a place for everything. I think we've just kind of found that sweet spot with our clientele, who are smaller clients who are looking for the partner who can, roll up their sleeves and get their hand dirty and figure out what that custom strategy is for their launch.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. There you go.
Wonderful. I think it's so useful to know that information because people are likely, thinking about both, and it's great to know the difference between them. Another question that we can ask for all of you is, what challenges do you find that new employees have when they transition from academic research to careers in consulting or medcoms or project management?
Go for it. No, Kwamaa, go for it. Go for it.
I think there's a couple things. I mean, specific to medcoms, the way in which we write, essentially, you have to be able to write in many different ways for many different people. And I find that sometimes when people come in, they're very used to writing in one particular way, like they're used to academic style of writing, they're used to manuscripts and abstracts, that very scientifically robust type of writing. But we sometimes do patient-centric materials or commercial-centric materials. So you have to be able to be nimble. I think that nimbleness is the right word. You have to be able to be nimble, to understand the needs of who you're writing for, and then appropriately meet those needs. So I think that sometimes that can be a learning curve for some folks. Some folks, they can do it across the board, but definitely a learning. And then one other thing I find also to do with nimbleness is the ability to be flexible depending on our clients' needs. So sometimes timelines can shift. Sometimes, you're anticipating great phase 3 data, which will lead to X, Y, Z, and then the trial fails, and now you got to pivot on what you're executing on your deliverables. So, pharma is always evolving. People leave, different pharma companies and move, and so you have to be able to deal with change and being flexible, being adaptable, and kind of think on your feet if a challenge comes to you. And again, just really think it through. So I would say that can sometimes be a challenge, but it's always a learning, and people get there eventually.
I think building on what you say, Kwamaa, around the kind of telling the story, we find when folks come into the organization, and I would say it's more so individuals with PhDs, get really into the weeds. I want to understand, the molecular mechanism of how this interacts with that. It's like, whoa, take a step back. What's so what here? Broadly speaking, what's an important takeaway for me? Our clients aren't necessarily going to want to understand the minutiae. So it's trying to get people out of the weeds and really articulate and be able to communicate the most important pieces of, whether it's a scientific narrative or a piece of literature. I think that's a challenge that a lot of people have, and it takes quite a while to really get them to think differently.
If you've ever been to our website and you read about kind of how we approach things, I've jotted it down. Our one fundamental we have across the entire organization is to keep it simple. And we all know as scientists that we were taught that complexity is amazing and to be complex for the sake of complexity. We flip that on its head here, and I think that is probably something that everybody finds very, very difficult, because we do keep things simple, clear, and thoughtful. And I can speak from personal experience. I am the type of person that would dig into all of the molecular mechanisms and completely lose the story.
I love that, because I know I'm thinking about how I was in grad school, and I can totally picture getting stuck in the weeds, because that's what your whole PhD is. It's getting into the weeds and staying there, because that's where you're supposed to be. So I think another one that goes well with that is being concise. And I find that lots of grad students can work on that during their degrees as well, because to tell a simple story, you also have to be concise.
And then something else is be comfortable with not knowing everything. Right?
Yes.
I know going back to being in grad school, say, okay, I have to figure this out for myself. But no, actually, you've got a team of 39, 40 colleagues here who we're all working for the same cause. Reach out, speak to people, engage with them to say, let's talk through your problem or the issue you're having with them. so that, you know, as a collective group, we can solve for it. So kind of leveraging your peers to kind of reach that common goal. As I said, I think people come in and they think they have to figure it out for themselves, or really it's not the case, and it's actually impossible. You're moving into a new industry, potentially a new industry, and having potentially not done this work before, of course you're going to need to kind of leverage your colleagues and your peers. So I think that's another thing people struggle with coming into this world.
Amazing. Katrina, any challenges that you can that you've seen?
You know, I think the pace that we run at is quite different than what people might be used to. That takes a bit of a learning curve to adjust to. And just that little dance of being a client-facing industry. You know, our clients might come to us with a big ask sometimes, and inside we might inwardly panic and be like, oh, but you want to do what by when? And we have to kind of do that dance with them of being a client-facing industry where we are here to solve your problems. We are going to do what it takes to get it done. Here's some suggestions on how to get there, where the temptation might sometimes be like, what? That is crazy. And then we kind of realign on that. That takes a little bit of getting used to and a little bit of professional experience to understand how that dance with clients works.
Amazing. Another question that we had from the audience is, when projects are assigned, are they assigned to people based off of their specialization area or what they've worked in the past, or have they kind of assigned more as a group or not based off of that experience or specialty?
So I think I can address part of this. I think I alluded to it earlier in my kind of initial presentation, is that, you know, there is an expectation when you come into the organization that you have the ability to work across therapeutic areas, and really it's an onus on us as an organization to get up to speed. So coming from a neuroscience background, I never really did any work in oncology, but, you know, I had to, before I jump into a project, I need to get up to speed on this disease state, to be able to effectively communicate and talk to my clients about the therapy and the space in which they're working. So we do that. We do that through, you know, the development of internal scientific dossiers to really educate ourselves on the soup to nuts of the disease state. So we don't staff projects based on the folks' scientific training. Now, if there is an individual who has training that is complementary to our project, of course, we'll do our best to kind of match them up. Where we do staff projects, it will be according to their roles. So if there's somebody coming in the medcoms side, we'll make sure that they're on medcoms projects versus strategy projects. But yeah, it's really, you know, the expectation is everyone should be able to work across therapeutic areas.
It's really important for us to make sure that we are serving career development as well. So if a project comes in, that's a different type of project, maybe something like a global scientific platform, and somebody hasn't had that experience yet, then we want to move them there so that they get a wide breadth of type of deliverables to help them move within the company as well. So that's a big consideration, not necessarily what their, you know, schooling is, but, you know, what we need to do to get them moved up in their career here.
I love that. And it's so important in thinking about what is going to make people happy, what's important for them in their development, and really valuing them as an employee. I think that's an amazing approach. And it's kind of, I've always heard that a lot of people like these fields because they're always changing, that you get to work on different kinds of projects. It's always something new and exciting. And I think that is a perfect example. I think this wraps up the panel session. Thank you so much to all three of you for providing all this useful advice. You've given so many tangible things that our attendees can use to learn more about your company, learn more about these kinds of positions, and also to set themselves in strategic ways to be a great applicant for you in the future. So thank you so much. Does anybody have any last burning things that they want to say before we switch to networking?
I want to ask you like one question.
Sorry, we're not taking questions from the audience
okay.
at the time.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know. So actually, sorry, this just popped into my mind because Amanda, you mentioned this about how presenting information during your graduate studies or postdoctoral studies is a great way to learn storytelling and conciseness. If there's the opportunity to join one of those kind of 2 or 3 minute presentations, like tell your PhD in 2 minutes, push yourself. go for it. That's the best way of learning how to tell a very clear, concise story. I know they did that at McGill when I was there. I'm sure they do it at every school. It's nerve-wracking, but definitely take that step.
Or do it with your peers.
Or do it with your
Yeah.
peers. I set something up.
Go talk to your grandma about your thesis.
That's the
And
best audience. Right?
yes, if she can get it, then you're close.
Amazing, amazing. Well, thank you so much again to all of you for sharing such great advice. We really, really appreciate you taking the time out to help our attendees and all of our trainees at UHN.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank
all.
you.
Amazing.